sons of How do you feel about what your mother did? A friend has a mom who is a head and from his descriptions she's in rough shape, homelessness, ill health, $10 alleys. He is married and stable. He goes out 2 to 3 nights a week looking for her. When he finds her, he gives her money, gets her to eat, tries to get her off the street. Many times she doesn't recognize him. I asked him why. It's futile, and he knows it. He said, "It's my mom. As long as she and I are alive, I can't stop trying." Well, guess it's my time to shine. My mom had me with my father. From the beginning she was using my father. He loved her, she loved money and partying. Before my father and myself, she had a baby with her who she was in love with. My brother was her favorite, cause she loved her. At about 3 to 4 years old my mom and dad broke up, and she kicked me and my father out. We ended up homeless and sleeping on couches till my father met my stepmom. But as much as my stepmother loved my father and I, my dad was still obsessed with my mom, which led to him having an affair with her. My real mom ends up lying to my dad, telling him the baby she was having was his. He tells my stepmom the truth and of course she leaves. We begin couch surfing again, but this time with my mom and brother. My dad starts a cleaning company and we are able to rent and begin to have a semi-normal life. But then the market crash of the 2000s led my father to lose the company. As my dad lost jobs, the money we had my mother wasted on everything but bills. When my father found out, it was far too late. Months in debt, we lost everything. My mother fled to Florida, but before leaving she let my dad know his daughter wasn't his. She tried to convince me to leave my dad, but I knew going with her would be a terrible idea. So I sank with the ship she abandoned with my dad. I don't care that she was a but I do care that she was a terrible mother. Edit, a word. Rough mate, gonna say I knew that type of person. They are master manipulators. They know how to push the buttons for a man. A fool. I was one, when I was young, to be infuriated with her even with all of her faults. Hope things got better, and when she comes back, because she will lol, smack your dad in the head hard for him not to make the same mistakes. My English is not good. Hope you can understand this. Good speed. Hey, I appreciate the concern. I wish I could say that my father and I had a happy ending. But I'd be a lie. Had to stop going for my high school diploma and get a jet, then worked manual labor jobs till I could get a warehouse job. As for my father, he let her come back 3 times and each time the same thing would happen and she'd run away to another state. He's finally learned his lesson, but he's a shell of a man in comparison to who he once was. I still love him for not getting rid of me like my mom. Just wish he could've seen what I seen. By the way guys, if you are enjoying this video so far, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It will help us out quite a bit, and if you don't enjoy the videos in the future anymore, you can always unsubscribe. Let's get back to the video. I found it pretty terrible at the time. I find it even worse today. Back when I was 8 years old, we had to move out from our house with my whole family because my mother kicked my father from the house he was paying the rent for. Living in France, we were able to get social help since she was a lonely parent without work and we could afford a small flat with a little food. Walls were very thin. What I mean by that is that everything that would happen in the room next to the one you were in, you could hear everything. And my bedroom was in the middle of my older brother's and my mother's room. I could hear people entering the room, doing their stuff with my own mother before a few minutes of silence and another man getting in. And I heard that for 2 years until my mother found out I was diabetic, said that she couldn't take care of me anymore, and kicked me out so that my father could take me back with him. I feel mostly terrible about what she did because she wasn't even using this money to buy my brothers and I essential things like clothes, food or anything. Instead, she was using it in gambling and her I never heard from her after that. And it's better this way. Edit. Thank you very much for all your messages, awards, and such. Let me add something a little brighter to this story. As I told in the comments, social workers came and asked my father to come pick us up and stay at his place for a few days. Sadly after this, she never accepted to see us again. But since I've been with my father, everything truly turned for the best. While I was living at my father's, since my mother wasn't paying anything for us, he was doing it. He bought us at the time clothes, consoles, laptop, and bought me a phone after I got out of the hospital to keep contact with him. When both of my brothers graduated from high school, he bought them newer laptops for their studies, furniture, and also gave them opportunity to reach for pretty good schools. We now own a house. I'm currently aiming for an English license, and while always having the support of my father, things haven't been the best in the past. But I still have my father here who always supported me, no matter what happens. My mother was a in the Dallas/Fort Worth area in the 90s and early 2000s. I spent the majority of my time with her, going place to place and watching it all unfold. I would carry about a little JanSport backpack with an askreddit VHS, some action figures and cars, and everything seemed okay, even though I knew it wasn't the normal of everyone else. Days would go where I would see my mom, or I would just kinda bumble around hitting up the 7-Eleven, stuffing candy bars into big gulps. It was a really odd childhood, but I did and still do love my mother dearly. We had a strange bond in a mother-son way, but I don't know it was up as a kid, but I always knew mom would be there. We would normally get Happy Meals the day after, and it was really rad. I struggled through my teenage years as I learned about and whatnot, people making your mom jokes, and it was just always hard to work through that. I still hold my mother in such high regard because I feel like she did the best she could for a I'm in therapy now to work through that and other childhood trauma, and it's been good. Edit, it's actually been really nice and refreshing to share all of this with you. I have some writings I've been working on from this time. I would love to share them if anyone is interested. Also, some have mentioned doing an AMA if people see interested in down. Last update. I'll do the AMA tonight, and I'll try to link this for background for anyone else. I like your clarity. I had revelations about my mom in therapy. She was my only good parent, but not in a normal traditional way. She did what she could with the tools available to her. Exactly. On paper my father was the good parent, had a great job, nice house, etc. I lived with for a few years, but was emotionally and neglected. I can count on one hand the amount of time him and I have done anything together, but my brothers did everything with him. My stepmom viewed me as damaged good, so my father did also. My mother showed me love, compassion, sacrifice, and so much more. She did anything it took to make sure I was fed and enjoying life. I smile every time I think of those crazy nonsense days. Was she a Yes. Yes. Did she make awful decisions? Yes. Made this account just to reply to this very applicable question. It'll be a bit of a read, but I promise it all ties together. I spent a lot of time bouncing around places as a kid with my mom and dad. Dad was in and out of prison for violent crimes. Mom never had a job and kept jumping from boyfriend to boyfriend. I don't remember much of what happened in my life pre-age 10, other than the stuff. My mother finally ended up meeting a man that was taking care of her and super nice to my siblings and I. He had her live with him, but was unable to take my siblings and myself for reasons to be found out later. We got dumped off at my grandparents' mother's side for almost a year. While living there we would be beaten with planks of wood for next to no apparent reason. 10y/o me, 9y/o sister, 8y/ brother. We considered this fairly normal behavior since all we've really grown up with was so it was never mentioned to my mom or her boyfriend. Near Christmas my mom and her boyfriend were planning on coming by to visit us and spend some time together. I got batteries for Christmas this year, nothing else from grandparents. When we had time with them alone the beatings came up in conversation with my mom, her boyfriend and the kids. Screaming fight then occurred between grandparents and them. We were immediately scooped up from my grandparents' place by my mom and her BF, nothing but pajamas on, and no other clothes taken with us. The next day mom's boyfriend takes us out clothes shopping, buys us whatever we want. Treats us to places like Chuck E. Cheese's, swimming pools, restaurants and all sorts of fun stuff nearly every single day. Around 11 years old I start to figure out why we are being kept out of the house so often. It was a essentially. I was never a dumb kid, but I was always quiet and kept it to myself. Why mess up all these Chuck E. Cheese days? I didn't realize my mother was also one of the working until certain days I had no choice but to stay in the house and hear her work in the room next to me. This life goes on all the way through to my high school years. Her boyfriend and her end up breaking up halfway through. My brother gets sent to live with a family that specializes in taking care of children and my sister is still with us. My mother is back to jumping around boyfriends but still working. What surprised me the most during all of this is that her ex-boyfriend decided to keep on taking care of my sister and I. He was never a strict father figure. I skipped school and did whatever I wanted. Yet, he was always there for me when no one else was. He would always give me money if I needed it, advice when things got rough and a family that I always wanted. He was definitely not your typical. Fast forward a few years and my mom has turned to and is still working. She's staying in a place with my stepfather, this is what I call him now, and myself. I've turned into a fairly large man by this point, and every time she had a problem client, I'd be called in to kick them out, which was always fairly odd, but I didn't mind. I have a big trigger when it comes to violence against women and I will absolutely not stand for it. Especially after my father would constantly beat my mother when I was a child. Remember those selective pre-age 10 memories I have? My biological father has become a paranoid schizophrenic and has for some reason started to take to spending time with me because he can relate to me now that I'm a man and not a kid that needed a dad. I blow him off eventually in a bit of a fit of rage about everything he's done and what he's never been there for. Haven't spoken to him in years. Now I'm nearing 30, no contact with either biological parent. I just got a house with my girlfriend and her family treats me with plenty of love. I still see my stepdad every week and talk to him all the time. He's older now and can't run the business anymore. I help him financially or with labor any chance I get, and I have absolutely no problems with this. This is the best dad I could ever asked for. Not the son but the grandson. She had when she was younger. When I knew her she was a strong Christian and I didn't find out about that part of her past till I was older. There was a story that she had told that came into focus when I was older though. She told the story of being together with my grandfather and how she was with this rich guy. She would host his parties and go out with him all the time, but grandpa was in love with her and wanted her to marry him. The story was grandpa and the rich guy had a confrontation and the rich guy said what could he give her that grandpa couldn't. Grandpa said a family for her and her kids. Grandma chose the poor army serviceman, aka my grandpa. In hindsight grandma was the rich guy's paid mistress that he took to parties and out on the town. Grandma was apparently a real looker back in the day. As a kid I was confused on why the rich guy wouldn't marry her if he liked her. I never asked directly. So what do I think? Times we tough. She did what she had to do to support her kids on her own, and when she found true love she left it all behind and built a family. It kind of sounds like when the French and English nobility would pay beautiful women to be their own personal. In certain circles, they would even go to parties, as long as it wasn't the type of party their mothers also attended. But you don't marry your mistress, you would marry a woman of equally high birth, and usually well off as well. And then keep a mistress on the side, of course. So your grandma probably knew she would only ever be the side piece, and that well would run dry as soon as her looks would falter. Kinda curious what she looked like, to be honest. I grew up with a guy whose mother was a. It did not end well. He was a multiple men. She was a severe. Last I knew my friend was in prison. The mom has long since been dead. My sister was adopted by my mom at birth. Her biological mom was. As an adult, my sister reached out to her BO family and her mom is now sober, or something like it, and doing much better in life, so it's nice for my sister to have a bit of a relationship with her and her siblings. She really suspected, when she reached out, that her BO mom would be in the situation of your friend's mom, which is to say dead from a. I'm glad your sister's biological family is doing well, thanks. This was such an offhand comment, I wasn't expecting it to gain any attention. Because of my sister's story, I'm a big supporter of adoptions and fostering. I'm also glad she had the option to look for them if she wanted, not to say I don't understand closed adoptions too. She doesn't call her BO mother mom, just by her first name, but her and one of her brothers have become really close, and it makes me very happy. Mine didn't walk the streets, but she slept with men when we needed money or food. She hid it pretty well. We always thought these men were being nice and just giving us money. Now that I look back on it, it all makes sense. She passed 10 years ago, and I'm thankful to her for it. I'm sorry for your loss. It sounds like she was just doing anything she could for the family to get by. I'm glad you're at peace with it. Is it good for women to have this choice or not? Right? In one way, what kind of society makes people have to make these kinds of choices? But on the other hand, it can be seen to be empowering in a strange way. They should always have the choice. It's their own bodies after all. But society is and people resort to work in order to feed families, pay for school etc. is disgusting. I don't think this kind of choice should be one people have to make. Social programs like universal basic income and easy access to social workers and programs like Medicaid and SNAP should be commonplace. Sadly, they aren't. I have a lot of respect for someone going to the ends of the earth to feed and protect their kids in the kind of situations that many, but especially the US government, is choosing to create every day. Didn't think I'd ever see the day where other people would be talking about this. I'm a son of a and I've literally seen it all growing up. I can remember being left in a trap house and my mom telling me she'd be back in a few hours. Little did I know she wouldn't be coming back for a few days. I can vividly remember eating stuffed Oreos for days and hating them. For some odd reason I had strong mother-son bond with her, although she put me through the most difficult times. And it never really went out. I haven't seen her in about 10 years now. Through various prison movements and coronavirus, she is seemingly unfindable. Out of all the crazy I've seen because of her, I still feel sorry for her and love her, just like I did was little. I truly don't hold any resentment for her actions anymore. I forgive her. Though she put me through a lot, I wouldn't wish any negative energy upon her. You're a better person than I am. My birth mother was. I've been left in plenty of house with strangers, family, ward of the state and group homes. Biggest difference for me compared to most, for a few years I was brought along and would hang out on the streets with her until around 6 years old, but I have very clear memories unfortunately, and she would do her job in the back seat with me in the front. I have woken up more times than I can count from her screaming for the act or straight up. I've made plenty of trips to clinics and still remember the people attacking the cars of whatever John was driving. I'm pretty sure I'm a product of said acts, as my father was never ever mentioned. I'm 36 now, and the only good side of all of this is I'm untouchable. The amount of I have lived through, dealt with physically and emotionally has made me so resilient nothing that happens now bothers me. Outside of that, I don't care much for her, and TBH don't really care where she is or how she is doing. I have blocked her a few times when she makes new Facebooks. We have not talked in over 10 years, and I'm okay with it. Mine was one in the past, before I was born. She never hidden the fact she was one when I was old enough to understand what was. Doesn't change a thing for me. She's still my mom who sacrificed everything to keep me well fed. Still love her with all my heart. That's such a nice answer. I'm glad you had a relationship where you were able to talk about things and it wasn't a huge awkward secret. You sound like a great family. Seriously, secrets are lies. I didn't found out I had a half sister till I was 12. Pissed me off so much, we could have been friends that whole time. I found out I had 31 half siblings when I was 22 BC. Apparently my parents used a sperm donor and just had neglected to mention that my entire life. My siblings are some of my best friends now though. I just wish I'd had my whole life with them. That's so I'm so sorry. It's not that bad. Well, depending on how you look at it. We never got to grow up together and form that bond, and by the time we met we were consumed by teenage. Life goes on too, and if you don't have that close connection time can fly by. It's honestly gonna be fun getting to know her better now that we both have kids and a reason to get together. I'm 30 and she's about 35 I think, so in the long game I guess it worked out for me. I guess I'll bite backstory. It went something like divorce, mild medium / unable to keep a steady job / possible mental illness into pretty much fully realizing the life of a with completely unstable living circumstances. Haven't spoken to her in 12 years and I'm not really sure what she does now. I have heard that she still visits the clinic and pretty much survives by jumping from man to man and is still living an incredibly unstable life, losing children to the state. Yep, despite being in her late 40s by now. Same as always, more or less. You shouldn't be picturing a woman strapping on high heels all made up with the exotic frilly whatever when you imagine what this looked like. Know full well that this is all housed within poverty, mental disorder, poor decision making. Imagine what the poorest person scraping by looks like, mixed in with a proclivity for terrible choices. And who happens to be unfortunately beautiful, and then you have a realistic picture. She sold herself, and like all things bought and sold she bore a cost and the years have not been pleasant. Not proud to admit that I have seen photos of her since all of this when I looked up her Facebook. She used to actually be stunningly beautiful, but the years of heavy use and smoking, it's just what you see is exactly what it is. The destruction of a person. There is no other way to put it. How do I feel about what she did? What can I say? Obviously not happy about the whole ordeal, but when one copes with reality you sort of learn that you have to surrender your feelings. Truth be told, my feelings on the topic have never mattered, and they never will. It was entirely out of my control and I can only judge her from an obscured vantage. I can only be critical with my hindsight. She made the wrong choices too many times, associated with the wrong people too many times, and could not find a way to integrate herself into the modern world. My life was much harder than hers starting out, and yet I've managed to do okay for myself, so I actually sometimes cannot fathom what went through her mind to make her up as hard as she up. I think she did it because that was the quickest path to a better life, and I'm not embarrassed by it. She was from a very poor family in Seattle, so it would have been impossible for her to claw her way out of poverty. My dad was drafted into the army at the tail end of Vietnam and ended up stationed at the DMZ in Korea. He has always been very shy and socially awkward, so my guess is he met her at a brothel there. She thought he was some rich American soldier and decided it was a way to get to the US for her and her family. He was not rich, and when she figured as much, having been in the US for a while, she went back to what she knew and opened a brothel in a truck stop town under the backdrop of a gym. She was the madam, but this was in another state, so we started living apart as a family. I only got to see her a week at a time, many months apart from then on. I was fairly young, so I never really knew what was really going on, but I think it was more of a happy ending kind of place. She got into and just disappeared one day. I had always assumed she was murdered, but my sister recently told me my dad elaborated on how bad her problem was and kind of alluded to her contracting and committing. He never dated or remarried. It certainly affected me tremendously, but it mostly makes me sad. I've only ever wanted to have a more normal family life like my friends and cousins from my dad's side. I have that now with a loving wife and kids, but I'll always be damaged goods. I hope I don't screw them up. My mother did what she felt she had to, and I love and miss her. It's very hard to not know what really happened and to probably never have any closure from a difficult situation. This is the end of the video. Thank you guys for staying with me till the end. If you enjoyed watching this, you might as well watch these too.